Greetings, it's Adam with our Rata Non Grata, almost said Arcade Heroes there, and here to play a game that you might not have ever heard of called Phase Zero. And the reason why you probably haven't heard of it, unless you're really into the Atari Jaguar scene, is because this game was never finished and was never released, at least officially. Granted, what we've got here is as far as I know, the most complete prototype of the game, but I'm not aware of the source code ever being made available, which is a shame. It'd be quite interesting to see this game be finished and completed. I believe there was a very early version for the Sega Saturn that was also in development, but I never heard if that actually has leaked out onto the internet, or if it ever really made it that far. But this is a game that was supposed to launch on the Jaguar back in 1995, mid-1995. But unfortunately, that was a year when Atari, well, they had some pretty hardcore competition come along that pulled the rug right out from under them, and particularly with their boneheaded decision to equate bits to power in their marketing. And now, to be fair, they weren't the first ones to do that. Sega was really the ones that pushed that the hardest early on, like in the Genesis lifetime, but Atari took that and multiplied it by 4 to say, well, those other consoles are only 16-bit, but we're 64-bit, and that means power, which it doesn't. And that's something I get tired of having to say in comments, because there's always some moron out there that comes along saying, oh, the bits, it doesn't look like a 64-bit game. Well, there's nothing that looks like a 64-bit game or a 16-bit game, because again, bits don't equal graphic fidelity, and so it equals speed is to the speed that information can be transferred or processed by a processor, but that's also not the only factor in speed either, such as megahertz or gigahertz. And so had the Jaguar chips run at a much higher clock speed, then that would have made a bigger difference than, say, 32 to 64-bit. And so that was me failing the mission right there. So let's jump back into it and see what happens when you actually finish the first level. But why I'm talking about graphics here on an unfinished game, well, as you've probably noticed, Phase Zero has some remarkably incredible graphics for what you would expect off of the Atari Jaguar. Now, why is it that the Jaguar didn't have all these super high quality appearance games? Well, it was just they couldn't really afford to hire developers like Capcom or Konami and the like, and fund games themselves that were able to look, say, like this for the most part. Granted, the team at HyperImage was a fairly small team, as I recall, but they were able to develop this height mapping technique, and I can't remember all the details, and I found a little glitchy spot where you kind of get stuck for a second here, but I'll get out. And but graphically, this is, I think, one of the best looking games on the Jaguar. Now, it does play to one of the Jag's strengths, which would be 2D sprites, which again, with the Jaguar, has been stated many times, it was designed as a 2D pusher, a sprite pusher first, and so it could push a lot of sprites, or aka 2D objects. You could do them at various different color depths as well as high color depths. Just had somebody comment on the Jaguar Graphics Showcase video that everything looks like an SNES game, but the SNES could not display more than 256 colors on the screen at the same time, unless, of course, you had something like maybe a Super Effects chip could increase that, but the stock SNES was not capable of that, and was certainly not capable of doing anything like this and at this speed. And that's another thing that's surprising about Phase Zero, is just how fast this game runs. And there's also some effects on the next level, or the next levels, that are pretty impressive to see, particularly with water. And so we'll get to those in a second, but first let's get to the objective, which is saving this person who's waving at you. Yay! Mission successful! Enemy craft destroyed, 38. My shot percentage was crap, so I'll just have to do better next time. But what do you think of Phase Zero if you've ever played it? I mean, it's hard to say if the gameplay would have really moved anything. The graphics certainly would have, because that was one thing that Atari was freaking out about at the time of 1995 when the PlayStation was coming along, was we need 3D games, and this was a way to do 3D, but with a very unique sort of method to do so. But I'll be pausing here just to look at the moving water, which is another impressive effect. But if you want to see more Phase Zero, let me know, and I'll record more, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.